that Jesus does not answer the question. He says, it is very difficult. He says, you have to seek the narrow gate. And what does that mean, the narrow gate? You know, again, we can look at Jesus when he talks in the strange language. He sometimes says, I am the bread of life. I am the door. I am the gate. Sometimes we look at Jesus, and sometimes, you know, people say, well, you know, we know in our hearts that Jesus is the way. We even say, Jesus is the way. But what does that mean, Jesus is the way? You know, we come in single file for the Eucharist, right? We come in single file to partake of the Eucharist, and it's kind of a narrow single file. It's kind of the straight path to Jesus. You know, we eat and drink with Jesus. You know, we come forward for the Eucharist, you know, and we even say before the Eucharist, what do we say? Lord, you know, I'm not worthy, but I'm coming forward because I know that only through you can I be healed, can I be truly forgiven. But even so, Jesus again says, you know, there was some people that will say, you know, some of you disciples out there will say, you know, Lord, I ate with you, I drank with you. Why don't you recognize me? Again, the narrow way isn't so much just about, you know, saying Jesus, Jesus, and, you know, clanging your tambourines and stuff. It's about doing what Jesus did in this world and following Jesus and being Christ-like to one another. So one of the best places to look at the answer for the narrow gate is to look at the Beatitudes. In the Beatitudes where Jesus says, blessed are the poor, blessed are the sick, blessed are those people that sometimes we kind of disdain and move and shove aside. He said, for theirs is the kingdom of what? Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So again, just because we call ourselves Christians, just because, you know, we eat and drink with Jesus, or just because we follow, you know, we read the Word and we do all these wonderful things, Jesus is kind of disciplining each one of us the way he did to his disciples. He told them, you know, you have to grow in your faith. You have to follow me not only in the good times, but also in the bad times. Being aware that as a Christian, sometimes you will be persecuted, he's letting them know. And don't fall away because you're persecuted. And reach out to those that you don't like sometimes. You know, the people that we'd rather ignore or cast away, because these people are just as important to God. In the first reading, we hear about the wonderful vision of everyone from all over the world, from the north, the south, the east, and the west, all going towards Jerusalem, the holy city. It's the same way when we view the heavenly kingdom. That even though the way is narrow, we see a vision of a heaven full of people. Full of people. But notice that there's a lot of people that society rejected. And so, again, it's an admonition to his disciples. You know, you're going to go with me all the way to Calvary. Some of you are not going to make it. Some of you are not going to be strong enough to go with me on my journey to Jerusalem, to Calvary. Some of you are going to fall away. But we know that in the end, his disciples, at least the 12 disciples, did follow him. Were they perfect? No. They abandoned him, even, you know, in Calvary, but they were able to be Christ-like. Even in the midst of their weaknesses, in the midst of their fear, in the midst of the chaos, they were able to be faithful to Jesus. And that's why when we come forward later on to the Eucharist, in that narrow line, partaking of the Eucharist, partaking of Jesus Christ, we really need to look at the question, and not in a theoretical way or an academic way, but do we feel the presence of Jesus in our lives? Do we feel the healing power of Jesus when we commune with each other? Do we feel God's love when we give each other the sign of peace? Do we feel, Christ when we go out there into the world and help out, the poor and the sick and so forth? It's a question that was not asked, but it's a question that surely Jesus had in his heart as he answered their question.